back to Persephone Says. I am excited to talk more about luxury. It's one of the most popular things that we talk about here. And specifically today, we're going to be discussing how to build a brand that feels expensive without saying the word luxury. Because honestly, I don't think that we should be throwing that word out as much as we do. It's so overused. It's so diluted in its true meaning. And so today we're going to be covering off on brands that we regard as true L word, luxury, the myths around what it is and what it isn't. And we're going to go deeper into that because we've touched on it in the past. Pillars of what it takes to build an expensive brand and how you can actually apply those pillars to your own businesses. The mistakes that cheapen a brand, because that's just as important as knowing exactly what you need to do. There's lots of minute details in there that we really need to be considering. And then, we're going to wrap it up and hopefully you can take some of this and apply it. So what actually makes something feel luxurious, and how can a brand actually make that also feel authentic? Because those two things sometimes don't coincide. But in today's market, we know that audiences really value authenticity. They really value connection. And so you still need to be these two things as much as humanly possible, if that's the vertical that you want to go into specifically. So, when I'm thinking about our clients, we're always thinking about helping businesses and brands with every single touch point. We want to create a feeling. Luxury is a feeling. A lot of it is unspoken. A lot of it is within the edit. And the edit is not actually the reel or the TikTok. It's about editing yourself, the tone. So we're really going to go head first into the storytelling, the intentionality, the sensory experience. When we are talking about different brands that are within this space, I'm going to try to avoid using luxury as much as possible, but you know what? Fuck it. We're here. We're talking about a confident tone. We're talking about elegance and sophistication and insight and confidence in one's presentation, confidence in one's delivery of service, and oneself. That is what we're talking about. And sometimes those things, in fact, they should always not be said directly. It's inferred. And that inference is really what I want us to be thinking about, and most specifically what I want you to be thinking about as you're talking and evaluating and analyzing your own businesses and brands. When I think about the pinnacle of what luxury is or isn't and brands that are associated with it, I think you've probably heard me talk about Chanel or Auberge or Armand a million times on here, but I like to use them as different beacons, if you will, because they do such an excellent job in their presentation without even knowing or seeing a logo. The business or the brand associated with whatever you're seeing. It's so palpable. It's so pristine. There's whispers of and hints that are subtle and sophisticated, visually and otherwise. You're like, that's definitely that brand. Some other ones that are adjacent that I always reference and love are Loewe. Same thing, different type of luxury, different type of approach, but when you're seeing something that it can only be Loewe. So when we're talking about brands that have done such an excellent job at establishing themselves in this market as aspirational, inspirational, etc., we also need to talk about the myths associated with the word luxury. So they've done all the work to get us to the point where they are doing the reps. They are showing us, and the product matches the delivery, matches the packaging, matches the in-person experience, the the store experience, if you're at the hotels, like soup to nuts, the moment you walk through the doors, everything is so calculated. And that is what we're talking about. So let's pull back the layers and talk about the myths around the L word, right? If you have to say the word luxury in your bio, luxury over and over and over and over again, I often see this, sorry, with photographers, even planners, then oftentimes that isn't luxury. Like if you have to state it so blatantly, it's often not it. That is something to be very mindful of in your captions. That's something to be hyper mindful of in the verbiage on your website, because websites matter, friends, lest we not forget. You need to be focused more on the emotion and the perception of your audience versus repeating the same motherfucking word over and over again. Because again, you're never going to see those brands that I referenced before call themselves that on repeat. They're showing it, they're showing up consistently every single place, from social to digital to your emails, is cohesive. So that is imperative. Now, let's discuss some of the pillars that really make, I'm going to call it an expensive brand. So I've kind of put together a couple of pillars here for you as a reference point if you're leveling up, if you, again, are assessing for 26 and tightening up your brand. Like, let's really dive into what we're discussing here. So when we are building brands and assessing them and our partnerships, we're talking about restraint. We're talking about consistency, details, emotion, and exclusivity. Okay, lots of fun words here, so let's break it down. When we're talking about restraint, it is in the design. If you're a maximalist, own that maximalism. I'm going to use Versace as a perfect example of this. Like, no one is ever going to say that they are whispering luxury. They're bold about it. They're consistent about it within the colors, within the styles. Like, everything about it is maximalist and it works, right? That is how they operate. But again, it's also in sticking to that and not trying to sway and be something that they're not. So if all of a sudden that brand tried to be minimalistic because that was the trend of the moment, it would feel fraudulent, right? So that's one extreme. When we're talking about, say, you are a floral production company, right? And you are trying to show variation, which is good. You want to make sure that how you're delivering your ability to showcase style and design is still shown within the confines of restraint. So I'm talking specifically, let's speak on social media. Like, are you using white space appropriately? Are you allowing your eye to go in a Z pattern so that you can actually identify, or the user can actually identify what's going on in the image, what you want them to focus on? Sometimes we inundate people and almost drown them to death in what we think that people want versus what is actually the most impactful. Okay, that was a lot. We are drowning people in content because we think that more is more is more, when actually edit and restraint and making sure that it's in line with your brand and allowing content to breathe is really luxurious. Okay. Now I mentioned details. So when I'm thinking about the details, and we'll focus again a lot on social, but also web today, I'm talking about typography. I'm talking about music. If you haven't heard me say this, I want you to listen up. I love hip hop music so much. It's authentic to me. Would I have my team use like a Meg the Stallion song on the media socialites social pages? Probably not. Probably not, just because though it's authentic to me as a person and I might use it on my personal pages, it doesn't mean that that is the most appropriate just because it's trending for my brand. Okay. So there is a delineation between, and you must delineate between you, the person, versus you, the brand. You must delineate between, though it's trending on TikTok, doesn't mean that it's appropriate for your channels. Like, you can like something, all the time, but we have to be, we have to use our discretion as to whether or not this makes sense for your business. Okay. Now, I mentioned consistency. Oh my gosh, this is like one of my biggest pet peeves. I'm not just talking about how many times you're posting on Instagram a week. That's actually not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, there is disconnect and dissonance when you have different experiences. So if your social is popping off, even your website and your brand looks a certain way, but you're not responding to emails and you're ignoring people, or you are just bitchy in person or whatever, like, all of these things matter. And when there's inconsistencies in your brand and behavior in all of its forms, we have to look inwards. We have to. It sucks, but we have to. All right, I'll get off of my soapbox for that for the time being, because we'll probably go deeper at another point. Earlier, I mentioned that what is luxurious is evoking an emotion and a feeling. So I want you to be thinking about, can you make your brand aspirational? Do you need to be showing every single, and by the way, by emotion, I don't mean actually showing people's emotions, unless that's what you're selling. So let's actually dive into that. What I'm talking about here is a feeling. So if you are selling a feeling of luxury and you are a producer, you are a designer, then how can you evoke that in the details? In maybe you could share the reaction of your couples entering the space. Okay, fine. Not as the main photo or video, but the work needs to evoke something. I love this. Oh my God, I have to have this. The edit and how it's presented, is it stylized? Are you telling a story? Are you telling a motherfucking story? That's what's luxurious. If you're checking boxes, we can tell. If you are checking boxes, you are not diving into the story and the feeling and the connection, because connection, story, feeling, all of these things are tied together. Okay. Now, exclusivity is something that I think is sometimes thrown around a lot. I'm not actually just talking about price. I'm talking about access. So, Reagan from Reagan Events was here on the podcast a couple months ago, and she mentioned she only takes X amount of weddings a year, and she will not actually book a wedding for like 2 years from now, because she thinks that she's closing herself off from really big opportunities. So that is how she's been able to manage her business. And I think that there's something so cool and chic about that, because she knows that big budget clients have the ability to make big budget decisions in shorter periods of time. That's just a fact. So she's moving in a way where she's not accessible to everybody, though she's actually incredibly, personable and open and, all of those things and warm. However, the way she's moving in her business it feels exclusive. You can only, she's only going to take a couple of projects that really align with where she wants to take her business. And that is exclusive. If you are going to everything, if you are, and actually, I think it's important to talk about the amount of networking and such. If you are not being intentional with what you are and aren't going to, and you are too accessible, and I'm not saying relatable, I'm not using those words because those things mean different things. But if your brand is elusive, your brand is exclusive, then people should not be knowing all of your business. And you need to make yourself a little bit scarce. People need to be like seeing you, not seeing you, seeing you, not seeing you, but with intention, right? What are you going to? Where are you draining your energy? How much are you showing up on social media? How are you showing up on social media? Are you talking to people like a friend? That's going to attract someone else. Are you sharing that your kid is sick on social media, and you are messaging from your business page? These things matter, okay? So I really want us to be thinking again, like if you want to be like Chanel, then you need to move like Chanel, okay? And you need to adapt that for yourself and your business. Now, I'll be the first one to say that if you've been listening to this podcast, that I talk about the mistakes that I've made over and over and over again and have learned from, thankfully. I think it's important for us to really look inwards as far as like the things that we're doing that are accidentally cheapening our brand. So I mentioned when people are going on they own a venue and they're posting as a person talking about things unrelated to what their core audience would really care about on their brand's page. Like, no, let's not do that in the year of 2025. Let's get a Finsta. Let's get another page that is, just for friends only. Like, let's not. Okay. I think when you are talking about actually speaking to your clients, over communication is elegant. Overselling is cheapening your brand. When you're talking, oh my gosh, this is such a trigger for me. When I was getting married, and I remember talking to my dad about different places that we wanted to get married, and he used the word package. And I know we all operate largely in custom, but we all have tiers, whatever you want to call it. But internally, calling it packages, cool, do that. But when you are speaking about luxury, the word package makes me feel like all inclusive, which is not necessarily associated with ultra luxury. Okay. So it just really turned me off and made me feel like I don't want to just be, another cookie cutter version of the wedding right before me. Huge, 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 like red flag. Please don't use words like that. Think about what is going to attract that client. Think about how that client moves. Where are they traveling to? How are they shopping? What are they eating? You have to get into your client's mindset in order to be able to speak to them and meet them where they are, even if you are not living like your ideal client is living, because oftentimes you're not. You have to fake it till you make it. Okay. And you might still not be moving or living like your ideal client, but you have to at least have insight into their psyche, because the biggest mistake that you can make is be trying your best to speak to this person who's never going to even take you seriously because of the words or the visuals that you use. They just don't psychologically connect. If you are inconsistent with your tone, and people really neglect words these days. Words really matter. They matter for SEO. They matter for AIO. They matter because actually your words are the difference between the yes or the no. They are a green flag or a red flag. They can show professionalism. They can dive deeper through storytelling on what you did that articulates an exclusive experience without saying exclusive experience. Okay. Furthermore, if you are leaning so heavily into trends, it really, and granted, y'all, I love a good trend on social. Like, keep that to your TikTok. Sometimes that's okay. Keep some of that to your TikTok, but sometimes I think we lose who we are and we dilute the core ethos of our brands because we're trying to be cool, frankly. We're trying to be of the moment. We think that's what's going to make us go viral. If that's what you're chasing, it's very unlikely that you will. That's just like the sick fact of it all. But B, it really is doing a disservice to you and your business and your brand. So, said lots of things. Now, how do you actually apply this? The first step is always auditing your visuals and your tone. And if you need help with that, get a third party. Obviously, media socialites, we can do that with you and for you. But a third party allows us to remove the emotion associated with the event. Were you having a shitty time in your life there? Was something else going on that, muddled the waters or the experience, or like you can't stand looking at those images or that video because, the client pissed you off, or there was a vendor that was annoying that day? Like, we are removing all of that when we are assessing and analyzing what is best. And if it's not us, go and connect with someone who can be honest with you and direct with you and unemotional, so that you can actually have a critical perspective on, like, do I have the content that I need? Am I showing the content that I need to show to my ideal client? You also need to think about, obviously, your digital footprint. Are you spewing so much content and information because you're operating in, 2021, when more was more is more, where we thought we needed to post because we had more time, really 2020, so many times a day, or posting so much content that like didn't actually add any value, that like things have changed. You need to edit yourself so that you are presenting properly, so that you are presenting authentically. But if you don't have anything valuable to say, then we need to either come up with a good storyline for you that connects, and or we need to just like go back to the drawing board 95% of the time. I'm not saying to just erase or remove yourself from social altogether, but please, please don't post to post. It doesn't work. In fact, you're just like wasting your own content and probably investment of time. I want you to think about the story that you're telling, because slogans do not connect. Story does. When you are able to explain what it took for your team to make this happen, how many people, how much time, how many samples, like what is additive that is boring to you that's actually additive to your ideal client? How can you deconstruct a story so that it's giving something different? It's giving a different perspective. Can you tell why you started your business? And you need to think about the fact that, by the way, it will get boring to you to tell the same story, but your ideal client is constantly coming over and over and over again for the first time, right? So you need to think about, every time you post, you have an opportunity to connect, deepen a relationship with someone who is potentially following you already, or someone who is not. Both are viable clients for you. So it's super important. I want you to think about the way with which you are curating yourself and how you can appeal to people visually, through auditory, and then also through emotion. So that was a lot. I want to leave you with this. I want you to